The night my parents erased me from their lives began with an invitation written in my mother's perfect cursive, the kind she used only when she wanted to pretend we were the kind of family that celebrated things together. I should have known, the moment that envelope slid out of my mailbox, that nothing good was coming. My parents never called without an agenda, and they never summoned their daughter without expecting a return on investment. My name is Mercy Rowan. I was 33 years old when this happened, managing risk for a mid-sized tech finance firm in Raleigh, proud of the tiny apartment I afforded myself, and the modest independence I fought for inch by inch. Everything I had in life, I built outside my parents' shadows. But even then, even after years of distance, a single dinner invitation still made my stomach twist. Family drama sinks its claws so deep that sometimes you bleed without knowing where the wound started. I drove my old sedan up their circular driveway, listening to gravel crack under the tires like brittle bones. Their Georgian-style mansion gloated against the dusk columns, reaching upward as if begging the heavens to confirm my parents' importance. They loved to talk about legacy inheritance, wills, everything that turned human relationships into transactions. My mother greeted me at the doorway with a wide smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wore pearl earrings and a silk dress that looked expensive enough to pay my rent for 3 months. My father stood behind her, tall and stiff, dressed in a suit, darker than the evening sky. He didn't offer a hug. He rarely did. Inside, a long dining table waited, but no food. Only a single leather folder and 2 untouched glasses of wine sat near my father's seat. I knew immediately why I had been called home. They wanted something from me, something dangerous, something they wanted done quietly. My father gestured toward the chair across from him. Merci, sit. I sat because I always did, though every part of me braced the way I used to, when storms cracked open the sky above our house. My father opened the leather folder. We have a problem, he said. Rowan. Properties is facing a liquidity issue with the Riverside expansion. A loan has been approved pending independent risk verification. Since you are licensed and family, you are the most efficient solution. There it was. The manipulation, the expectation, the assumption that I would clean up their mess in the name of loyalty. I flipped through the documents. Bold numbers shouted lies from the page. My pulse quickened. The property valuation was grossly inflated. Projected rental occupancy listed at 90% on a building that didn't even have plumbing installed yet, and they had claimed future revenue as current assets, a violation so blatant any auditor would call it fraud. I pushed the folder back gently. I can't sign this. My mother's face stiffened. She had 2 expressions, offended and more offended. Don't dramatize, Merci. Everyone bends numbers. Not like this, I said quietly. If the loan implodes, I lose my license, I lose my career. My father leaned forward, eyes narrowing. If you walk out without signing, do not return here. You are either part of this family, or you are nothing. Something inside me cracked but didn't break. I stood slowly. Then I'm nothing. I expected yelling, crying, bargaining. Instead, the front door slammed behind me before I reached it. A suitcase sat on the porch. My old suitcase packed, waiting. As if they anticipated my refusal, I reached for my phone. No signal, no service, no emergency calls. My family plan had been canceled within minutes. They didn't just kick me out, they deleted me, and for the first time in my life I felt the cold clarity of someone who had nothing left to lose. I drove blindly into the night until the lights of a 24-hour gas station appeared like a neon mirage. My hands trembled as I slid my debit card into the ATM. Declined. A second attempt kept my card, swallowing it like a final insult. I tried my credit card at the register. Declined again. The cashier glanced at me with a mixture of pity and suspicion. I stepped outside, feeling the world tilt beneath my feet. My parents had frozen every financial account I owned, all tied in some way to a family co-signature I never thought would be weaponized against me. Now I knew better. Inheritance and betrayal may not share letters, but they share bloodlines. I sat in my car, tears blurring the windshield. My mother's voicemail played next, her voice sharp and icy. Merci. Your behavior tonight was erratic. We will not have our name associated with instability. Do not attempt to contact us or interfere in Rowan Properties business." She hung up. I gripped the steering wheel. My breath shook. They never loved me. They loved the version of me who obeyed. The version who made them look good at Christmas. The version who kept quiet at family dinners and pretended everything was fine. But I wasn't that woman anymore. My work phone buzzed, suddenly picking up a weak Wi-Fi signal from somewhere nearby. A meeting request from my company's HR appeared. Mandatory disciplinary review at 8 tomorrow morning. Allegations of conflict of interest involving Rowan Properties. My father had gotten ahead of me. He had framed me before I could report the fraud. My career was already collapsing before sunrise. I drove 3 miles to my best friend Juliana's apartment, the only safe place in a world suddenly hostile. When she opened the door and saw my face, she pulled me inside without asking anything. I told her everything. The dinner, the documents, the threat, the financial blackout. She listened quietly, then paced, heels clicking across her wood floor. "They're trying to starve you out. If you can't defend yourself, you can't expose them." A knock interrupted us. A courier handed her a thick envelope. Legal notice, a cease and desist order threatening millions in damages if I revealed any family privilege discussions regarding Rowan Properties. "They were terrified," Juliana whispered. "If they weren't desperate, they wouldn't move this fast." That was when I remembered it. A small metal case at the bottom of my suitcase. My grandmother Lena gave it to me the year before she died, telling me only, "Keep this safe. One day you'll understand." I opened the case now. Inside was a single silver key and a handwritten note. "If they ever turn on you, follow the truth they buried." My family's darkest secret wasn't the fraud. It was something deeper, something rooted in inheritance lineage and the will my grandmother once tried to rewrite before it mysteriously disappeared. For the first time since the night began, hope flickered. Maybe I wasn't the powerless daughter they believed they could erase. At 8 the next morning, I stood inside the cold glass lobby of my company, heart thudding like a warning drum. The HR director, a woman who normally offered warm smiles, wouldn't meet my eyes. She escorted me into a small conference room where an external attorney sat waiting. Expression unreadable. He slid a sheet of paper toward me. The allegations were brutal. Manipulating risk assessments to benefit Rowan Properties. A lie so polished it gleamed. I tried explaining what really happened, but the lawyer raised a hand. "The investigation is active. Your access is suspended. Your license is under ethical review." In other words, I was done. I left carrying nothing but my coat. The morning sun hit me like interrogation light. Cars zipped past. People hurried to work, unaware that my life had been detonated. Juliana met me at a cafe down the block. She had already pulled files on Rowan Properties and tracked the corporate structure. It was worse than we thought. Multiple shell companies, unreported loans, quiet settlements, tax irregularities. Everything hinted at something much larger than a desperate cash flow problem. I reached into my bag and removed the silver key. It was thicker than a normal key, engraved with a tiny emblem I had never noticed before, a crossed pair of oak leaves. The Rowan family crest. Under it, a number. Not an address, a box designation, a location only. Someone with old knowledge would recognize. "This is a safe deposit key," Juliana whispered, "but not from a commercial bank. This is from a private archive." My grandmother Lena was the only member of our family who ever spoke to me about truth, about legacy, not tied to money, but to integrity. She died when I was 19, shortly after telling me she had changed something in her will. My parents said she was confused. The revised will vanished. I was starting to understand. We traced the emblem to an old private archive 3 blocks from the courthouse, an institution so selective it didn't even have a public website. Only long-established families used it. The idea that my grandmother hid something there made my heartbeat quicken. We walked together, the cold morning wind slapping my cheeks awake. Inside, the building smelled like leather dust and secrets. A clerk verified the key, his expression shifting subtly when he saw the crest. "This way, Miss Rowan." My stomach tightened. They had called me by my birth name, not Mercy Rowan, as I used professionally. We were escorted into a small room where an iron box waited. The clerk unlocked it with the silver key. Inside was a stack of letters, a folded legal document, and a small envelope with my name written in my grandmother's looping handwriting. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. A single sentence stared up at me. "They are not your blood." The room swayed gently like the world itself took a breath in shock. Juliana whispered, "Oh my God." For the first time, the truth felt dangerously close, and my parents' cruelty, their desperation, their terror suddenly made perfect sense. They weren't protecting their legacy, they were protecting a lie. The letters inside the iron box were bound with a faded blue ribbon. They smelled faintly of cedar, the same scent that always clung to my grandmother's sweaters. I untied the ribbon and unfolded the first sheet. The handwriting was Lena's sharp and elegant. "My dearest Merci. If you are reading this, then the truth has reached you in its own time. I could not protect you from the choices your parents made, but I can give you the knowledge they buried." The next lines broke my breath in half. "You were born to someone else, not to Caroline and Charles Rowan. You were entrusted to them after choices were made in fear, not love. You have a right to the truth they hid." My fingers trembled. Juliana steadied my arm as I kept reading. "Your mother could not conceive after your brother was born. They arranged a quiet adoption through a private intermediary, insisting your origin remains sealed. But when I learned the circumstances, I insisted that you be told. They refused. They threatened everything. They believed the truth would weaken their legacy." My grandmother wrote that she had tried to amend her will to ensure I received what she called moral inheritance, the part of the estate meant to pass through her daughter's line. But once she attempted it, pressure descended from every direction. My parents claimed she was confused. They forced a competency review. The new will vanished. She wrote these letters in secret, storing them in a place only I could access. Juliana leaned forward, reading silently with me. Every page untangled another thread. My parents' treatment of me, the distance, the criticism, the transactional tone, it all clicked into place. I had always felt like an outsider in my own home. Now I knew why I wasn't theirs, not by blood, not by desire. I was an acquisition to maintain an image, a replacement, a product. And once I refused to comply, they discarded me. The folder beneath the letters contained an older will, my grandmother's original, handwritten and notarized decades earlier. In it, a clause directed a portion of her personal estate to my daughter's firstborn daughter. That was me. But my parents had suppressed this, presenting only the amended estate division that favored my brother, their golden child, and the family business. "This," Juliana whispered, "is why they're terrified. If you challenge the estate, everything unravels. Their assets could be frozen. The courts would examine the missing revision. Their financial empire depends on the illusion of legitimacy." I lifted the last page of the will and found another note taped behind it. "Merci. Blood is not what makes a family, but truth decides who can claim your loyalty. Do not let them rewrite your story. When the time comes, stand." I swallowed hard. For the first time since losing everything, I felt something solid inside me. Not anger, not revenge, purpose. Juliana nudged the legal folder gently. "We can take this to court, or we can use it strategically. Negotiation leverage." "No." I sat back, breathing slow and steady. "They taught me my whole life that I owed them everything. But they owe me the truth, and they owe for what they did." "I don't want to destroy them," I said quietly. "But I won't let them keep lying." Juliana nodded slowly. "Controlled payback. Strategic, not reckless." "Exactly." As we left the archive, a cold wind sliced through my coat. For the first time, it didn't make me shiver. My grandmother had left me a weapon sharper than money. She left me the truth, and I planned to use it. The next step was understanding how deep the deception ran. Back at Juliana's apartment, we spread the documents across her old dining table. The handwritten will, the letters, the safe deposit inventory. Each one was a piece of a puzzle that could either clear my name or ignite a family confrontation that would scorch everything. Juliana studied the financial structure of Rowan Properties. She traced subsidiary companies and found evidence of misreported assets and questionable transfers. Nothing ready for court, but enough to make any investor nervous. "If we push," she said, "they'll push back harder, but if we let them know, We know they may change tactics. I wasn't afraid of confrontation. I had been raised in a family where emotional manipulation was the language spoken at breakfast. But this time everything was different. This time I had proof. This time I had leverage. But before using it, I needed one more thing: answers. Growing up, my parents kept every detail of their lives gated, guarded, and sanitized. Holidays were performances. Birthdays were photo opportunities. They treated family like a brand. I had never met anyone from my biological past, never knew even the faintest detail. The letters revealed only hints. I knew nothing about the woman who gave birth to me, or why she gave me up, or why the Rowans fought so desperately to conceal it. A name might be in the sealed records, Juliana said. But private adoptions through intermediaries are messy. They often bypass formal filings. Messy. The word captured my entire childhood in one breath. But if my grandmother had found the truth, then the intermediary must have left a trail. Using the archive's insignia, we found a historical partnership list. Halfway into the printout, Juliana froze. Here, a mid-90s partnership with a legal adoption facilitator named Hartwell and Pine. That firm handled discreet arrangements for wealthy families. We called, a tired receptionist answered. When we explained we were inquiring about old records, she told us politely that their archives were closed to non-clients. Then Juliana leaned closer to the phone and dropped the name Rowan. Silence. Then please hold. When the line reconnected, an older man spoke. His voice calm, controlled, professional. Ms. Rowan, he said. We expected this call might come someday. My stomach dropped expected. Your grandmother contacted us years ago, he continued. She requested documents in the event of complications. The word complications hung heavy-weighted with things left unsaid. He told us they could release only one item, a sealed envelope my grandmother left in their custody, addressed to the daughter of the biological mother. Me. We drove across town to retrieve it. The receptionist handed it to me carefully, as though it were alive. Thick, cream-colored paper. My name written in handwriting I didn't recognize. A tremor ran through me as I slid my thumb under the flap and opened it. Inside was a short letter written in a slanted hand. I wanted to keep you. Life didn't let me. I hope you grew in a place of love. My breath hitched. Love was the one thing missing from my childhood. The one word my parents spoke as if it cost them something. Juliana touched my arm. Merci. Do you want to know her name? I hesitated. My entire life had been defined by a lie. Learning the truth felt like stepping off a cliff. Yes, I whispered. Juliana unfolded the second page. Her name was Marin Hale. I felt that name settle over me like a warm blanket and a sharp blade at the same time. Now we knew the truth, now we had leverage. But I wasn't ready to strike, not yet. I wanted to face them with the truth in my hands. I wanted to look into the eyes of the people who raised me and see for once whether they felt even a flicker of remorse. And if they didn't, then the real confrontation would begin. That evening I sat alone in Juliana's tiny living room, the glow of the streetlights casting pale patterns on the wall. My grandmother's letters rested in my lap, the ink softening at the edges where my fingers had traced every word. Grief, anger, relief, confusion all tangled inside me like threads in an unraveling sweater. Juliana brewed tea, setting a steaming mug beside me. You're quiet, she said gently. I didn't know how to speak the truth pressing against my ribs. My whole life I'd been told I didn't fit. I was too independent, too emotional, too questioning, too different. Now I knew why. Their blood didn't run in me. Their expectations were armor meant for someone else. Their coldness wasn't my fault. It was their fear of being found out. They weren't just protecting an image. They were protecting a secret that could dismantle everything they built. I folded the letters carefully. Tomorrow, I said softly. I'm going to see them tomorrow. Juliana's eyebrows lifted. Are you sure? I nodded. Controlled, payback required control. If I marched into a courtroom now, everything would explode. But if I confronted them privately first, if I gave them one chance to be honest, I'd know whether this fight would be a war or a negotiation. What if they deny everything? Then they deny everything, and I'll know exactly who I'm dealing with. She exhaled slowly. Then I'm going with you. The next morning, we drove to my parents' mansion. The same gravel crunched under my shoes as I walked toward the door. My heart pounded, but not from fear, from clarity, from knowing that I finally had something they couldn't shut down. The housekeeper opened the door, startled to see me. My mother appeared seconds later, dressed impeccably in cream and gold as if she had been preparing for a magazine cover, not a confrontation. "Merci," she said stiffly. "This is unexpected." I stepped inside. "We need to talk." My father entered from his study, brows furrowing when he saw Juliana, but tightening when he saw me. "We have nothing to discuss," he said. "Leave now before you embarrass yourself." I reached into my bag and laid the handwritten will on the marble table. The color drained from his face. My mother's sharp inhale cut the silence. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. I opened the second folder. The letter from my biological mother. The adoption record. The archives certification. Their eyes darted from document to document, like trapped animals sensing the walls closing in. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked quietly. "Why lie all these years?" My mother lifted her chin. "We gave you everything. We raised you as our own." "You raised me as an accessory," I said. "You didn't raise me as a daughter." My father slammed his hand on the table. "Enough, you will not threaten this family with old paper and emotional theatrics." "Threaten?" I stepped closer. "I'm not here to threaten. I'm here to tell you that I know, and I'm giving you one chance, one to acknowledge what you did, to accept accountability. If you do, we can move forward. If you don't." I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't have to. My father's nostrils flared. "This family is built on reputation. You owe us silence." I let the stillness stretch. Then I shook my head. "I owe you nothing." Juliana placed a hand on my shoulder. "Merci, let's go." As we turned to leave, my mother's voice cracked for the first time. "You have no idea what you're doing." I looked back at her. For the first time, she looked small. "No, Mother. For the first time, I actually do." When we stepped outside, the winter air felt sharp and clean. The confrontation wasn't the end, it was the beginning. By the following afternoon, Rowan Properties began circling damage control wagons. My brother Oliver called twice. Then their corporate attorney left a voicemail. Then my father emailed Juliana directly, which was both illegal and desperate. The subject line: Family Matters. The body: Cease all inquiries. We are prepared to negotiate a private agreement contingent on your discretion. They were cracking. Juliana printed the messages and clipped them neatly into a folder. They're shifting from intimidation to containment. Classic pattern. They're scared of exposure. The next move was mine. But I wasn't ready to go. Nuclear revenge wasn't my goal. Justice was. Closure was. I wanted them to acknowledge the truth, not because I needed their validation, but because truth was the only currency they could never manipulate. That night I reviewed every document again: the adoption letter, the will, the financial discrepancies Juliana uncovered, and buried beneath the outrage and betrayal, something in me softened. I wasn't abandoned by my real mother. She had wanted me. Life pinned her into a choice, and my grandmother had fought for me even when it cost her peace with her own daughter. Someone had loved me, someone had chosen me, and the people who tried to bury that truth were the ones who needed me to remain small. But I wasn't small anymore. Juliana poured us each a glass of wine. "So what's your plan?" I took a long breath. A controlled strike, one they can't predict. We drafted a formal letter to my parents. Professional tone, no emotion. A request for voluntary acknowledgement of the original will's clause confirmation of adoption truth, and a meeting with neutral counsel present to resolve estate discrepancies. When they read this, Juliana said, "They'll know you're not afraid." Exactly, and I want that. We sent the letter by courier. By morning, the fireworks began. My brother called again, leaving a voice message filled with half threats and hollow concern. The family attorney emailed a 10-page response denying everything and insisting I cease my campaign of harassment. But hidden near the bottom was an interesting line: "We are willing to review materials in a mediated setting." That was the closest thing my parents had ever given to surrender. Juliana sat back, their blinking first. I exhaled. Good. Because mediation means transparency. And transparency means truth. And truth means they can't control the story anymore. We scheduled the meeting for the following week. The night before it, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining walking into that polished conference room, facing the people who shaped my entire childhood through fear and silence. What if they dismissed everything? What if they twisted it in ways I wasn't prepared for? Juliana sat beside me on the couch. Your strength isn't anger, she said. It's clarity. You're not trying to destroy them. That's why you won't lose. You want truth, not blood. She was right. I wasn't waging war. I was opening windows in a house where no one dared let light in. When the meeting day arrived, I dressed simply. Navy blouse, black slacks, nothing dramatic. I didn't need theatrics. I was the truth walking. We entered the mediator's office. My parents sat on one side of the table, rigid and elegant, their attorney beside them flipping through papers. Oliver slouched in a corner seat, arms crossed. Annoyed, he had to be present. I sat with Juliana across from them, calm, steady. The mediator began with pleasantries I barely heard. My parents avoided my eyes. Their attorney cleared his throat. State your objective in pursuing these documents. I answered in a voice even I didn't recognize, quiet but unbreakable. I want acknowledgement of the truth. Nothing more, nothing less. My mother's jaw tightened. My father straightened his sleeves. The war for control began. But this time I wasn't the one on the battlefield unarmed. The mediator opened the session by asking me to present any documents relevant to my claim. My parents' attorney smirked as though expecting me to offer nothing more than flimsy sentimental scraps. I placed my grandmother's handwritten will on the table. The smirk vanished. My mother's hand twitched. My father's jaw locked. Their attorney adjusted his glasses with unnecessary slowness, stalling, scanning, trying to understand how something they buried so thoroughly was now staring back at them. This is invalid, he said finally. Handwritten amendments are not recognized without supporting. Juliana laid down the certified archive record beside it. The attorney stopped speaking mid-sentence. Next, I placed the adoption letter. My mother choked. My father looked toward the window as if he could escape through it. The mediator's eyebrows lifted. This is substantial documentation. My father leaned forward, voice strained. This is a private family matter. None of this changes our intentions. Merci has always been chosen, I said quietly, wanted. Silence swallowed the room. My mother's voice came out thin. We raised you as our own. You raised me as an obligation, I replied, as a symbol, but never as a daughter. Their attorney tapped his pen. Ms. Rowan, are you seeking financial compensation? I didn't flinch. I'm seeking truth, recognition, and correction of my grandmother's original intent. That answer startled everyone, especially my parents who expected hostility. Instead, I offered clarity, controlled, firm, strategic. The mediator asked my parents if they acknowledged the authenticity of the documents. My father exhaled heavy and unwilling. Yes, the original will existed. It was set aside after concerns regarding competency. My grandmother was never incompetent, I said. You pressured her. You erased what she wanted. My mother's eyes glistened with something, guilt maybe, or fear. The mediator continued. Regarding the adoption, my father's voice cracked. You were ours from the moment you came home. Not the question, I said. Did you hide the truth? My mother's shoulders curled inward, the first sign her armor was breaking. We thought it was best. We thought knowing would change things. I inhaled deeply and lying didn't. The mediator paused to let the tension settle. Then he turned to me. What resolution do you pursue? Everything in the room hinged on my next words. I did not want their money. I did not want revenge, that scorched earth. I wanted accountability. I wanted them to rebuild truth where they built walls. I want acknowledgement on record that the adoption occurred. I want recognition of my grandmother's intended bequest. And I want assurance no further actions will be taken to damage my career or reputation. Juliana squeezed my hand under the table. My parents' attorney whispered urgently to them. They looked pale, cornered, stripped of the power they once wielded so effortlessly. Finally, my father spoke. Fine, if that is what you demand. Not demand, I said softly. Deserve. My mother looked down at her hands. I saw her age in that moment, not in wrinkles, but in regret. We never meant to hurt you, she whispered. But you did, I replied. And now you have the chance to stop. The mediator drafted a preliminary agreement. My parents signed, their signatures shook. When I walked out of that office, the winter sun blinked through gray sky. I felt taller, anchored free. Juliana smiled at me. You did it. No, I said, stepping into the light, I finally started, because truth wasn't revenge. It was liberation. Even after the mediated agreement was signed, the emotional weight lingered like the aftertaste of bitterness. I expected relief to wash over me. expected triumph, or even release. Instead, I felt hollow. Juliana noticed. You look like someone who won but doesn't feel like it. I shrugged. Maybe because winning wasn't the point. I hadn't reclaimed my family. I'd simply confronted the truth. And truth, unlike reconciliation, doesn't wrap itself in warm endings. A week later, Rowan Properties' internal turmoil spilled into the business community. Investors questioned valuation discrepancies. Rumors circulated. A partner company requested an independent audit. My parents' attorney began sending Juliana polite updates, an obvious attempt to maintain good standing, now that I had documents capable of reopening my grandmother's estate case. I didn't ask for any of it. I didn't want their empire to crumble. But truth is a solvent. It erodes the coatings people use to hide cracks. Meanwhile, I still needed to rebuild my own life. I applied for reinstatement with the ethics board using both the mediated acknowledgement and evidence proving my refusal to engage in conflict of interest. With Juliana's help, I prepared a statement that was firm but not accusatory. I presented my grandmother's letter as context, not weaponry. The board responded within 2 weeks, license reinstated. I sat alone when I opened the email, letting tears slip down my cheeks. Not because of the words, but because I had fought for myself for the first time. Truth isn't gentle, my grandmother once wrote in a letter, but it sets the bones straight. I planned to visit her grave that evening, something I hadn't done since leaving home at 20. Before leaving the apartment, I received a message from an unknown number. Merci, it's Oliver. Can we talk? I stared at his name. My brother had always been untouchable, wrapped in privilege and praise. He had my parents' features, their approval, their affection. His life flowed effortlessly, but now he was reaching out. Juliana glanced at me. Are you going to answer? I typed a short reply. Meet me at the park in an hour. When he arrived, he looked older than I remembered, worry weighing his face. As he sat, he rubbed his hands together. I didn't know he said quietly, about the adoption, about the will. They never told me. I studied him. Did I believe him? Did it matter? I think. He swallowed hard. I think they were afraid. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of losing you. My chest tightened unexpectedly. They didn't lose me, I said. They threw me away. He nodded, shame flickering in his eyes. You deserved better. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know, I'm here if you want. Anything. It wasn't a healing moment. It wasn't cinematic redemption. It was small, imperfect human, and somehow that made it meaningful. Thank you, I said. That's enough. He walked away with slumped shoulders, carrying burdens that were finally his to examine. That evening, I went to my grandmother's grave with lilies and sat on the grass, breathing in the quiet. Thank you, I whispered, for seeing me, for choosing me, for trusting me with truth. The wind moved through the trees, the kind of wind that feels like an answer. When I left, I felt lighter than I had in years. This wasn't the end. It was the clearing of a path I had never been allowed to walk. A few months passed, marked by slow healing rather than dramatic shifts. I moved into a new apartment with sunlight in all the right places. I returned to work, gaining colleagues' respect again as rumors of the investigation faded. My supervisor even offered me a quiet apology for assuming the worst. I wasn't the same woman who walked into that gas station months earlier, stripped of money, identity, and a place to belong. I was someone rebuilt from truth. But family threads don't unravel cleanly. One rainy morning, my mother appeared at my office building, hair damp eyes, tired. She had never come to my workplace in my entire life. The sight startled me. She approached with slow, hesitant steps. Merci? Do you have a moment? Every instinct urged me to turn away, but something softer, something inherited from my grandmother told me to listen. We sat at a small table in the lobby cafe. My mother clasped her hands tightly as if holding them together kept her from falling apart. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I've never been good at emotional honesty. I almost laughed. That was the understatement of the century. She continued, voice trembling. I loved you. In my way, I know it wasn't enough. I know it wasn't what you needed, but I loved you. My throat tightened. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel that truth. But love without tenderness is a locked door. Love without truth is a burden. I stayed silent. She swallowed, eyes glistening. I'm sorry we hurt you. I'm sorry we lied. Your grandmother warned us, she said. Secrets rot the foundation of any family. And she was right. Everything is falling apart. I looked at her carefully. Did she want forgiveness? Healing or restoration of control? What do you want from me? I asked. She shook her head. Nothing, just for you to know I'm trying. That was new effort where there had never been effort. But effort wasn't the same as change. I appreciate your honesty, I said softly. But I need time. And boundaries. She nodded slowly, I understand. For the first time, my mother left without a command, without a guilt trip, without a weapon hidden under velvet words. When Juliana heard the story that night, she nodded. That's progress. Not reconciliation, but progress. And progress was enough. 2 weeks later, I received a certified letter. The Rowan estate, prompted by the mediated agreement, finalized the amendment, honoring my grandmother's clause. A portion of her inheritance transferred to me, not enormous but symbolic, a recognition of truth long denied. I accepted it not for wealth but for closure. Standing on my balcony that night, I watched city lights shimmer like tiny declarations of resilience. The woman who once felt erased had rewritten her place in the world. But one final chapter remained, not about confrontation but about identity. I decided to search for my biological mother, not because I lacked family, because I finally knew I deserved answers. It took careful navigation and patience, but with Juliana's help and the agency's historical records, we located a forwarding address tied to my biological mother's name, Marin Hale, a small town 2 hours away, quiet, surrounded by old oak trees and winding roads. I drove there alone on a Saturday morning. The sky was soft gray, the air cool. My heartbeat thrummed like a distant drum as I pulled up to a small white house with blue shutters. I knocked. The door opened slowly. A woman in her late 50s stood before me. She had warm hazel eyes, the same shape as mine. Her breath caught when she saw my face. "It's you," she whispered. I knew instantly. Not because of resemblance, but because something inside me, something deep and instinctual, recognized her. "I'm Merci," I said softly. She brought a trembling hand to her mouth and began to cry, not loud but silently, like emotion had been waiting decades to escape. We sat at her small kitchen table. She poured tea with shaking hands. I didn't know where to begin, but she did. "I wanted to keep you," she said. "I fought for you. But I was 20 alone, without support, without stability. The Rowans had resources. They promised you a better life. They insisted anonymity was best." "Did they tell you you couldn't contact me?" I asked. She nodded. "They threatened legal consequences if I tried." It didn't surprise me. The Rowans had always been experts at control. She reached across the table, hand hovering, unsure if she had the right to touch me. I placed my hand in hers. Her eyes softened with relief. "I always hoped you'd come someday. Not to confront me, just to let me see who you became." I smiled faintly. "I think I'm still figuring that out." We spent hours talking. She told me about her life, her choices, the grief she carried. I told her about mine, the childhood shaped by distance, the confrontation, the truth that reshaped everything. She listened with tears, with pride, with a gentleness I had never known in maternal form. Before I left, she held my hands. "Merci. May we stay in touch." My voice caught. "I'd like that." When I drove away, the weight in my chest didn't disappear, but it settled into something softer. Understanding, perhaps, closure. Or the beginning of a relationship that wasn't built on blood alone, but on honesty. When I returned home, Juliana hugged me. "You look lighter." The truth hadn't broken me. It had rebuilt me, piece by piece. Months later, I stood on a stage I never expected to use, speaking at a regional conference on ethics and corporate finance. My story had spread quietly among colleagues. Not the scandal, not the betrayal, but the fact that I had reported fraud, despite immense personal pressure. People respected courage more than perfection. As I spoke, I saw women in the audience. Women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, nodding with understanding. Family drama, betrayal, inheritance, favoritism, the weight of secrets. These were universal scars. My closing line echoed something my grandmother once wrote: "Truth is not a weapon. It is a mirror." You cannot fight what you refuse to see. After the applause faded, I stepped outside into warm spring air. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Thinking of you today. Proud of you. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't repair, but it was human. And that was enough. Juliana met me outside, grinning, ready to celebrate. I nodded, more ready than ever. As we walked to the car, I realized revenge had never been my destination. Controlled payback wasn't about burning bridges. It was about reclaiming the ground I stood on. My name was Mercy Rowan, daughter of truth, not secrecy, daughter of a woman who wanted me, granddaughter of a woman who protected me, and survivor of a family who tried to erase me. But I wasn't erased. I was rewritten. And now finally I belong to myself.